So going directly into the overview, and again, you can ask questions freely in the chat box. If a question should be answered verbally, Kyron, Matt, or Simon will get my attention and then we will read the question, but most of the time they're effectively handled in the chat. And feel free if you see one to answer yourself. And if you're wrong, Simon will tell you you're wrong. That's his job. All right, so why do we submit data in general for CalPADS, right? It always comes down to legislation. And for Fall 1, some of the key legislation that we submit data for is the local control funding formula, the Every Student Succeeds Act, which is the reason why we submit data for all the submissions, and then the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, right? These are three key legislations that require accountability of the data, or we use the data to determine accountability for our LEAs. When you think about the Fall 1 data collection, it's just the first of many. There's 3 submission windows, Fall 1, Fall 2, and end of year. But there are 6 submissions. You can see end of year has 4 submissions by itself. But focusing on Fall 1 on the far left, you can see that some of the data that's going to be reported will be enrollment counts, dropouts, LCFF eligible students, English language acquisition for those students, Title III eligible immigrants, and students with disabilities. We'll revisit this in a few slides. These 2 slides, the data collections, right? You see that we have 6 throughout the year, 3 different submission windows. And this kind of a visual representation of a calendar emphasize that you have to do this year round. There really are no breaks. That's the key takeaway here. We have time that you can focus on the Fall 1 submission, but it overlaps for your cohort processing for your secondary schools, as well as we want to emphasize it overlaps with the Fall 2 submission. For the most part, your teachers, your courses, that's already determined. You can submit that data right now. So you can submit that data. You might not be focusing on it. You don't have the Fall 2 reports available, but you certainly could be submitting the data. But Fall 1, of course, would be the priority because it has the most near deadline. This looks like a little break. As Kyron always says, this is not a cross your feet, cross your hands type of break. In this period, there's a lot of work still that's ongoing. If you're not resolving anomalies and getting students tested, you're preparing for your end of year submission. You'll see that slide in future trainings. So let's talk about the important dates for Fall 1. Yesterday was Census Day, October 2nd. The relevance of Census Day is that all the reports that we certify later on, all the data that's used to determine your P1 counts is reflective of yesterday. So regardless if you certify at the end of November or in December sometime, we're not looking at those counts for that time of year, right? Students come and go. You might have a greater enrollment in December than you did on October 2nd, but we're only looking at the enrollment counts, the program participation of your students, the English language acquisition status on October 2nd. The next day, just above that, it would be December 2nd. This is not an official day. It's just a milestone for us at Census. We try to encourage everyone to have 0 fatal errors 2 weeks before the deadline. That would be about December 2nd. It's been proven that if you have 0 fatal errors by December 2nd, it's easier to certify. That 2-week window of 0 fatal errors allows you to really spend time, focus on your reports. Every year there's someone who has poor LCFF counts because they certified reports that don't accurately represent the number of students eligible for LCFF. Every year it happens to some LEA. The certification deadline is December 13th. That's your first hard date, right? That's the date that you must be certified. Um, your P1 counts come from December 13th. This year, the students with disability data disproportionality will be taken from the data certified on December 13th. So it's increased importance of on the initial deadline. And then your final deadline is January 24th. The buck stops on January 24th. Your P2 will be represented from the data that's certified on January 24th. The trick is, although you're allowed to work on your data in the amendment window, right? It's amendment window. You're supposed to be making small changes because really from December 13th until February 20, whatever it is, here's a link to the calendar. I don't know the fall two date yet. You want to focus on fall two. If you're still doing fall one work in January, you're pushing fall two further and further behind, and it really condenses. And there are no amendment windows for fall two. When the deadline comes, it comes. All right, so again, just to emphasize, Census Day is always the first Wednesday in October. This Wednesday, it was yesterday, October 2nd. And I told you we revisit what was reported for fall one. So we report the enrollment count of all active students on Census Day. So those students who have enrolled on or before October 2nd, and those students who have either no exit date or they're eventually exited after October 2nd. They're enrolled in your LEA on or before October 2nd. They're there. The enrollment count of specific subgroups represented in the statewide enrollment count. So of your active enrollment, what programs do your students are a part of, or what subgroups do their demographics include them in? A count of the English language acquisition stats for all students. So fall two, we focus on English learners and their services. In fall one, we take a count of all English language acquisition statuses. The count of Title III eligible immigrant students, the count of students in LIP programs or language of instruction programs. We take account of the special education program plan types, a count of students exited as dropouts from the prior academic year, and then, of course, the all-important count of students who are FRPM eligible, those students who are counted as disadvantaged students for the purposes of LCFF funding. All righty then. So that's the overview. Now we'll talk about the data submission.